we'll do introductions. In the meantime, as we're getting everybody online, we were asking if you'd been to camp as a kid. If so, if you'd put it in the chat as to where you went to camp, or if it was a sport camp or an overnight. So JP and I are Girl Scout campers, it looks like. Elena said Young Life. 4-H camp, Sydney. I used to work, I didn't go to 4-H camp, but I used to work for a 4-H camp in environmental education. JROTC, yes. Was that an overnight too, like a couple weeks, Ashley?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, when I went, it was like a 3 or 4 day camp.
Did you enjoy it?
I loved it. It was great. I wasn't, the like stereotypical high school ROTC, but it wasn't really like that. It was a lot of just like outdoor stuff, camping, archery, that kind of stuff. It was great.
Cool. It's a great way of getting into that. And then let me scroll down a little bit. Susan didn't want to tell us what camp she went to. I think her kids, didn't they go to Merrimack? Am I thinking wrong? Right? Your daughter's named Mac.
Well, no, we go to Marywood with Holly and like a group of families for 20 years, but I never got to go to camp. My mother had like a work camp and it was no fun, snapping green beans and gardening and restoring a 200-year-old house all summer. But then I did Teens Camping Tour of the West and it did change my life. A month out west sleeping under the stars was
awesome. I will say that we still have camps like that where you snap beans and can restore stuff. If you still want to go to that type of programming. Camp Toccoa, yeah. Melissa, you and I have talked about Camp Toccoa. And volleyball camp, yeah, good. Got that. All right, well, cool. So I just always kind of like to open up the conversation, kind of getting a feel for who people are. And we're small enough that I think we can introduce each other. So I'm going to have y'all just say who you are, and if you can, talk about something that you like about the outdoors, and then we'll go to the panel and I'll start asking them questions. So students, tell us who you are, your major, and something you like about the outdoors, or something that you like about camp. I'll give you that. And then panelists, same idea, who you are, who you work for, and something about the outdoors. I'll go ahead and start since I'm the one still yakking, and I'll give you a little time to think of it. So I'm Joy James. I teach in the recreation management major here at Appalachian State University, and JP reached out to me and said, hey, would you moderate this panel? Because she knew I had a camp runs in my blood. I've not only gone to camp, I've been a camp staff member, and I've also been a camp director. It was for a Girl Scout camp as well. But I've had experience with not campfire. I've had with Campfire Boys and Girls. And then I've worked in Russia at camps, and I've worked in Ukraine at camps as well. So just know that there's some international opportunities out there for you. And then I have had the privilege of being able to work with people and professionals in the camp field with the American Camping Association. So I've got some background and some passion for it. And Melissa, as a former student of mine, she's heard me say this, my evil plot, I have a couple of them, but one of them is to get people to be camp directors. So
succeeded with me.
My favorite thing outdoors is the sunshine and walking in it. I tell you what, I'm going to pass it over to Melissa and then we'll just pass it to each other.
Okay. So my name is Melissa Auten. I graduated from the Recreation Management Department at Appalachian originally in 2012. And so my background is I grew up going to Camp Toccoa as a kid. My life goal as an 8-year-old was to grow up and be a camp counselor. And then pretty much once I got to college, joined the rec department and continued on and achieved that goal. Went all the way up, starting as a CIT at Toccoa, up, and then after I graduated, 5 days after I walked, I moved to Northwest Montana and was the assistant director out in Glacier, Montana for a hot minute. And then from there, just kind of bounced around the country, doing a little bit of everything. So a lot of high adventure facilitation, teaching some outdoor ed in the redwoods of California, overseeing an aquatics program in Wisconsin, all sorts of stuff. And then decided to it was time to leave the camping industry. I thought it was time to leave the camping industry, and I convinced myself I should go to grad school and get a real job, and stop, moving every year and such. So I ended up back at Appalachian to get a master's degree in mental health counseling, and then as I was doing that, Joy and I reconnected, and then struggled to really fully leave my camp recreation days behind. Spent my summers working for Watauga County Parks and Rec, and then Joy and I did some research on combining mental health and the utilization of nature in the therapeutic process. And then from there, I graduated, and I was just like, I don't really want to be a therapist. I kind of want to keep doing the recreation thing. So then I ended up on staff with the recreation department and ended up teaching a couple of classes and absolutely loved it. And actually lucked out. I was on campus one day and struck up a random conversation with a recruiter with Mountain Youth Academy, and that's the organization I now work for. And so I manage the recreation department here. And so my organization is not technically a camp. However, I do joke I am trying to turn it into a mental health camp where we put the treat in treatment. And so we are residential. We're located in Mountain City, Tennessee, so only like 40 minutes from Boone. And so we serve kids ages 5 to 17, and they are in our facility because they are struggling to function socially and behaviorally in everyday society due to mental health diagnoses, specifically related to trauma. And so we're a trauma-based facility. So what I do is then I turn around and play games with them and teach these kids to the best of my ability how to be children, because a lot of them lost a good portion of their childhoods due to trauma. And we play and we play a lot. And my goal is for us to keep playing even more. And so I kind of started this department from scratch and started as myself. And we're in the process of growing, and the organization is seeing kind of the benefit of recreation within the mental health field and seeing how beneficial it can be for the treatment process, and specifically utilizing play for these kids in our care. Anything else, Joy?
You get to choose the next person to introduce.
Oh, okay. Sydney.
Let me unmute. Hi, I'm Sydney. I am about to graduate in the summer. I'm in the clinical mental health counseling program, and I actually did recreational therapy for my undergrad. So I have that CTRS certificate too.
Hey, good job.
So I'm hoping that I can kind of combine mental health and recreation. And what was it? My favorite outdoor thing to do? I really just like hiking and walking around. I think it's so calming, and then just getting your eyes full with beautiful sights.
Absolutely.
Sydney, you get to choose the next person.
Is anybody ready? Let's see. Andrea.
Hey everybody, I'm Andrea. Sydney, just as a side note, if you haven't read it yet, you should check out the book called Nature Fix. It's a great book just about how being in nature kind of helps our brain and the firing of synapses and everything like that. But, so I went to Michigan State for Human Development and Family Studies with a concentration in autism. And before I came to SOAR, I actually didn't really know much about recreation for a degree. I was like, what? I was kind of clueless on that. I did my internship at SOAR and fell in love with the area, with the program. And I've actually stayed here for the last 11 years. So I have worked my way from field staff to course director to logistics, like building cabins, to admin, to assistant director, and now director of our summer programs. And so, yeah, that's working at SOAR is a summer camp for kids with ADHD. We do take some high functioning autism. However, they have to be able to care for themselves. You can kind of think of our program as Outward Bound for ADHD kids. Where the trip and travel, where you're camping with them, they're doing a lot of interpersonal reflection throughout that time. We really try to build up their self-confidence, focus on their strengths and how they can utilize those strengths to be successful. And I like to say real life outside of camp. But we're really focusing this year on that social interaction part, because our kids are already so screen addicted that being at camp and interacting with others is so important for everybody, especially for our participants. Thing I love most about the outdoors, not having to shower. And part of that is like being able to be out like for 10 days at a time, or longer, being immersed into it and not having to worry about these societal norms that everybody expects. Let's see, let's do Elena.
Hi, I'm Elena. I'm a second year and I'm studying communication sciences and disorders, which is like so weird that I'm like in here, but what were the other things? I'm sorry.
What's something you enjoy doing outside?
Oh, throughout the summer I love being on the lake with my family, boating around and hanging out on the lake. It's a fun time.
Elena, you get to pick the next person.
Ashley.
Hey, I'm Ashley Lore. I'm a first year student. I'm double majoring in Spanish and psychology. So yeah, and I'm a career connector. I'm watching this from the Career Development Center side, just I like it. It's interesting. So yeah, my favorite thing outside, I love like sunsets and sunrises. Like I'm obsessed with them. I'll wake up really early just to watch it. And even if I'm tired, I'll always, go and watch them. They're my favorites. So yeah. Ross?
Hey y'all, I'm Ross. Sorry, I just got home from teaching. I am in my last semester as a special ed major at App State. I'm in the adapted curriculum program, so I'm focused on severe and profound disabilities. I've been working at camps for 5-6 years now. I actually run a 1-week camp for adults with intellectual disabilities in Greensboro, North Carolina. I've started an inclusive day camp in Chapel Hill for elementary age children with intellectual disabilities. So yeah, I just love camp. I think my favorite thing about the outdoors is the fresh air. I don't know, just being outdoors and having fun playing.
All right. I'm not going to worry about Susan. She may join us. She may not. Oh, wait, John, you haven't gone yet. Your turn, John. You're it.
We haven't heard from Jennifer either, have we?
JP doesn't matter. Just kidding.
Okay. Yeah, well, my name's John Blalock. I took the opposite route that Andrea did. I studied recreation therapy in college and then came to work at a summer camp run at that time by the Autism Society in Black Mountain. And so recreation was sort of my door into autism instead of the other way around. And, kind of fell really, my interest was piqued by not only the people I was working with, but the people that were doing the work. I was very interested in their skill set and very impressed with what I saw in terms of the people that I was fortunate to train under. The training that I went through was called Teach Training, TEACCH, and that's a program run out of UNC Chapel Hill. And then after graduating, I became a teach autism specialist and worked there for 10 years. So it's odd, I went through recreation into sort of clinical work, but always had in the back of my mind this idea, this underpinning of recreation and recreation therapy as my background. And when the opportunity came available to direct the camp, there aren't very many camps like ours, so it's a pretty specialized operation. So when the opportunity came, I was very pleased to take it. So now I'm directing the camp where I first got introduced to autism, and yeah, it's really cool. And I'm interested in getting further on in the discussion. I also I work out of a place called Christmount, which is a conference center, and we are, all the programs I run are secular programs. So we don't have any religious focus in any of the programming that we do, because we don't want to rule anybody out, or to, we want everybody who can benefit from the program to be able to come. And I run 6 weeks of residential camp for autistic children and adults, and some of them with co-occurring intellectual disabilities. So we take the full spectrum of folks on the autism spectrum for 1 week at a time. And we work, like I said, the cohort groups are split up by age. So we'll work with 4 to 11-year-olds, 12 to 17-year-olds, and then 18 and up. We have 2 weeks for each age group. And then I do two additional weeks of overnight camp for adults with intellectual disabilities. So I was interested to hear Ross speak a little bit about that. The major difference in those two programs is the people that we support at Camp Lakey Gap, which is our autism program. We actually, because we offer a 1-to-1 staff to camper ratio, we're able to support those campers that require maximum assistance with things like toileting and bathing and hygiene. And so we do take campers who need those accommodations, because we train our staff to work with them at a 1-to-1 rate. And then the difference with the intellectual disabilities camp is that that's sort of in the higher functioning range, if you will, sort of like Andrea was saying. Those folks are required to be able to take care of their own hygiene and not have any serious behavioral issues. But we can get more into the nature of the programming. And I may be presumptuous here, but I'm guessing that Andrea and Melissa and myself might all be recruiting for summer staff. So, I'm not going to try and ape anybody's, but if you hear something you like from any one of our programs, I think it would be, based on what I've heard from both of them, I'm sure there's work to be done. So my favorite thing outside is running. I enjoy running. I'm not very fast and I'm not very good at it, but I enjoy it.
Thank you, John, for also alerting me that JP hadn't gone yet. Susan is here. So Susan, I'm going to let you go, and then we'll do JP, and then we'll go into our questions.
Okay, great. I'm Susan McCracken. I am the director of the Career Development Center on campus. And I have worked with youth, and that doesn't include college students, but probably for about 16, 17 years of my career. I worked with the Upward Bound program. Not outward bound, upward bound, but we also had a very strong focus on experiential education. And outdoors is like the only place I want to be. And probably this time of year, my favorite thing, not in a COVID world, to do is ski. But if we get some good snow, I will be out cross country skiing and see Joy out there often. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay. Hi, I'm JP. I'm the career coach for the Beaver College of Health Sciences. So any student that's on here that needs some help, please reach out. I'm happy to help you. This week is a little busy, so maybe try next week. But my prior life includes, I was an executive recruiter. I've worked in financial aid for over 13 years. I know different various sundry things. And unlike Andrea, I do not like to be dirty. So I like sailing because on our sailboat, I can clean, we have water, and there's a toilet right there. And so I call it like glamping. It's like camping, but I don't have to sleep on the ground, and I can wash my hair when I need to. But I also like horses. I used to take care of my friend's horses when she still lived here. I really miss that. And did a lot of whitewater rafting, and I own my own kayak. But I did the upper Gauley, lower Gauley, the Cheat, the upper Yak, the lower Yak, and there's another couple in there I can't remember. But the Gauley and the Yak, I think, give me the street cred, right? Maybe.
You just rose in my estimation.
Okay, there you go. I've done them all.
All right. Thank you. And let me just share a little bit how I think the format is going to go. And since this was titled a career meetup, that's why I wanted to take the time to make sure that we introduced ourselves besides just the panelists, because it also helps the panelists to be able to tailor a little bit more to y'all's interest, to know where you guys are coming from. First off, I want to thank Jennifer at JP and Susan for putting this together. And then second, I want to thank the students for joining us. This says a lot about your interest and engagement to explore options. You might, like John was saying, I was more recreation, I got into autism, or you might be more into autism and you got into recreation. And camp is certainly, or working with youth serving organizations that are looking at these different populations. That's another way to utilize your communication disorder skills, Elena. There's just so many options out there that we don't always realize. So the format for the rest of this meetup is I have a few questions. At the same time, I would love to encourage you guys as students. This is yours. I have curiosity. I don't know exactly what you guys are interested in, so I'll start with some questions. If you have some specific questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat, or raise your hand, interrupt me, and feel free. This is a conversation. And I also want to highlight again that as John said, both Andrea, Melissa, and John are looking for staff, and definitely, I'm sure they would be willing to give you their contact information, talk to you a little bit more, and may even be at our summer job fair on Wednesday if you want to set up an appointment with them. Or now they know you, so you can set up an appointment outside of the summer job fair. Okay. Any questions before I move on? Great. All right. So camp is a special place for all people. And as I was listening to you guys talk, I realized you were using some language that I wasn't necessarily as familiar with, because I did not necessarily work with different or even diverse populations. I was Girl Scouts. And so, I heard some of the words that y'all were saying. And what I'm curious as camp or mental health professionals or health professionals, what do you recommend to young professionals entering in the field to work with your specific population? Like, what are some things they should have in mind or be prepared for that maybe has surprised you?
So I can touch on one thing, well, maybe a couple, but one thing that's really important for me, and I think you guys should know in the interest that you are seeking, is to learn people first language. It's so important to put the person before any disability or difference that they may have. When I'm interviewing, so actually I interviewed somebody yesterday that was just talking very negative in a camper's disability, and she didn't know it. And so I told her about it, and having that information and knowledge about that is really important. It made her come across as very insensitive and unknowledgeable. And it's like, you really want to work with our population if you haven't seeked out this information beforehand. I think, with the three of us, I may be the least severe of special needs, with ADHD and high functioning. But I think with any population, it's really important to treat them all the same. So our campers are usually treated as toddlers, even when they're youth or adolescents. are spoken to as toddlers. And so when you speak to them as an adult and sit down and talk to them with them on the same level, you get a lot further with them. You'll get them more invested and involved. You develop that rapport, which is really important as well. And then I think just being aware that sometimes they need more from you than what a neurotypical camper would need. They might need a little bit more empathy or support or understanding in the situations that they're in.
So
Go ahead.
I would say, and I've got a couple of things in mind. One would be just familiarizing yourself with different diagnoses of mental health, because no matter whether you're in recreation or camping, if you are working as a helping professional, you will be working with people with mental health disorders. And so, and especially in this day and age where the public is getting more educated, which is really awesome. And so, and seeking treatment is becoming more widely accepted, which is also really awesome. And so I would highly recommend even just educating yourself, even on the generic basis, because there is a lot of, I would say a lot of social nuances that our society is kind of deemed within the realm of mental health that really isn't. Like, if someone has fluctuating mood, like they automatically are like, oh, I'm acting so bipolar today, or like just really forgetful, and automatically be like, man, I'm so ADD, like I'm a squirrel, like that type of thing. And so some of the times the way, especially media and society, portrays mental health is not what's truly defining it. And so familiarizing yourself and breaking those, what you believe to be the knowledge base that society kind of portrays as one. And also learning and seeking out educational opportunities to learn just how the brain works. And so that was something that, especially moving from the recreation field into getting my master's, that like I kind of came in with my cohort, and everyone else was younger than me and had a bachelor's in psychology. And I came in, I was just like a recreation person, and I felt so far behind in a lot of my intro classes because they had already kind of had this knowledge. But what I found was that because I'd spent time in the field working directly with people, that as we got into the more advanced classes, I was actually way more skilled in the actual counseling practices because I knew how to apply them and use those critical thinking skills a little bit more. And it's so much easier to learn the educational content than it is to actually practice it. And so giving yourself those opportunities to like take psychology classes and abnormal psych classes and diagnoses classes, those types of things. I don't know like how many times, even just in my personal life, like I interact with my own mother differently now because like I understand how her brain works more so than I did, 10 years ago. And so that definitely changes the work that you do and how you are approaching whatever clientele you're working with, and how you go about the type of work you're doing. And so the recreational programming I do now is I structure it with a lot of the knowledge base that I've had in my recreation career, but the practices I use now are so much different. Like I have to, Joy and I have actually talked a little bit about this, of just like I have to really go through and think about there's a lot higher risk with what I do now. And so even something as simple as playing Jump the Creek, like I have to keep the ropes locked in a locked cabinet in my office, locked up. And so, or like my recreational spaces look a lot different now because we have fencing around the entire property. And so it does very much change how you approach it. And so even if, so to me, I would say just learn as much as you can and seek out those opportunities. And so even if it doesn't, especially mental health, even if you're working with a given population, like seek out other ways, because mental health it's everywhere and in every person. And so it can help you in your personal lives and your professional lives. And that whole thing is my recommendation.
Can you speak to your experience of like going from like recreation to like a clinical degree to back like to recreation? Like what was that shift like for you?
Yeah, so when I left the camping industry, I was just getting really burnt out on some of the politics that went along in the camping industry. Was like, I loved the exact work I was doing, but I was just finding, one, it was hard to be a female in a very male dominated industry, to be honest. And so I was finding that frustrating. I was also kind of burnt out on the lifestyle of moving around a whole lot. And so I literally just went for a walk around camp one day and I was like, what do I love about my job? And I landed on, I really love building connections with people. And so I was like, to me, it was all about, like that discussion, when you're 40 feet in the air with a kid that's scared to go off the zip line, like those were the moments that I loved the most, was bonding with the kids and even just like the chaperones and the adults, like just being able to like sit and have conversations with them. And I was like, what's a job that I can use where I can sit and build relationships and have conversations with people? I was like, going into school counseling. So I come from a family of educators. So I was like, it just made sense to go the school counseling route. And so I pretty much just like I flew home from Wisconsin and talked to my parents. I was like, I think I want to like pursue grad school and to go into counseling and this whole thing. And they're like, yeah, we'll support it. So I flew back the Sunday after Thanksgiving and resigned from my job on Monday. I was just kind of done. And but then as I moved back to Boone, I got a job with Watauga County Parks and Rec, and I was just like, man, it's like I kind of miss this, like just the playing the games and just the generic aspect of it. And so as like I mentioned, as I got into the field or into the classes as within my master's, I really missed being outside. And so that's where like Joy kind of actually really helped, because our research was nature focused. And so I felt like I was still I felt like I didn't waste my bachelor's degree. I didn't waste the 10 years I spent working in the recreation field. And I knew that there was a way that I could combine them. I just didn't know how. I just knew I wanted to make it possible. And so it was just, as I was taking classes, I would just apply it naturally in how you do with education of what I already knew. And what I knew was the recreation industry and working directly with kids for 10 years. And so it kind of just happened naturally and really organically. And then Joy and I ended up at a conference presenting for educators, presenting our research, and I realized like educators were really engaged in this, and that this was an avenue of the mental health field that was kind of there, but also not very heavily. And a lot of people didn't even know the benefits of nature and the benefits of play, and especially the benefits of play on development for young kids. And there's so many avenues, and I was just like, there's growth here in the field. And I really wanted to pioneer myself to kind of get in on the ground level with that. And so, and then like, as I did my internship and I was in the schools as a school counselor, and I hated it. I was like, I can't do this. And the role of the school counselor is so important, but it just was not for me. And I kept trying to do things like, I talked to my supervisor, I was like, can I like take this kid outside and like we go for a walk into our session? And she's like, no. And I was just like, well, why not? She's like, well, we just don't do that. I was like, that is not acceptable to me. Like, I I want to be able to utilize the skills that I had and implement them into this new field. And so that's kind of where after grad school, I just kind of was like, this is not the route I want to go. This is not the career I want. Which is how I ended up teaching, because I was literally between jobs and just trying to pay bills living in Boone. And like, no joke, like just random conversation one day on campus. And 2 weeks later had an interview with a job offer. So things always just kind of fall into place. But I've found since I've started working here that it is unbelievably applicable. Like these kids, like I said, don't come into our building knowing how to play. Last summer, I taught a kid the rules of kickball. I mean, an 8-year-old boy did not know the rules of kickball. He had never played kickball in his entire life. Most of them like don't know how to swing a bat. Most of them have never even ran long, like not even long distances, like just generically ran. So to me, it was my foundational step was fun and games. And so that's what I've been doing for the past year and a half, is implementing pure fun and games. So a lot of like basic Foursquare and tag and like, I don't even play basketball with the kids. Like it is field games. And so just teach, and there's been so many teachable moments in with that. And so the hard part that I've found is like I have to change my line of thinking when facilitating, because facilitating with this population is so much different. And so it's different. And like, oh, sorry, I'm talking a lot, Joy.
Right. We have a limited amount of time. And I appreciate what you're saying. I think John could also answer that first question and also share with you, Sydney, his transition.
Yeah.
I'm glad, thank you. And I'm glad Andrea brought up the stuff about terminology. I went to school, I studied recreation therapy, and I was taught about person-first terminology. And there are, with autism, it's interesting because in some ways it's like the deaf community, because there are some folks who prefer to be called autistic. They prefer identity first language. So I try to split the difference. And I usually, when I give talks, I give a note on terminology and say, I use the two interchangeably, because the main thing I'm concerned with is my audience, who I'm speaking to, how do they want to be addressed? Because the person first terminology assumes that the person feels like that the condition is a disability. And some folks with autism don't see autism as a disability. They see it as just an integral part of who they are. So thanks for bringing that up. But I do think it's important to be aware of how folks prefer to be addressed. And I'll put a link in the chat from the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network with some reading on that. And it sort of gives both sides of that thinking. So with regard to what I would say the most important element you could have is open-mindedness, and be willing to take a chance on any opportunity that comes your way that seems remotely interesting. Because I didn't have any notion about working with people with autism. I actually took the job on a dare walking through a career fair. So, somebody said, I worked at that camp, you should sign up. And I said, okay. And similar to what was shared with, what Melissa was saying, I fell into recreation therapy in a similar way. I mean, I was in the food court at University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and somebody came along and said, what are you doing here? I said, I don't know. And he said, well, let's talk. So, I mean, being open to opportunity and being open to experience, I would say, is the most important thing. And then secondly, if you're interested in serving people with autism, I would say try to have some experiences serving, that population, and understand that every individual you work with is different. There are some overarching categories. I think the most successful people that I've seen that approach this population are the folks who have some understanding of the characteristics, what the broad categories are, and then you couple that with an understanding of what about your approach addresses the underlying differences in that condition. So if you understand what the differences are, and then you understand what about whatever approach it is addresses those conditions, you have a lot more latitude in how you apply whatever it is you're doing, because there's no manual that is going to teach you how to do this work. There are lots of books that'll tell you, they'll show you where to look, but in the end, there's no manual that tells you how to work with individual A or individual B. So, I would say that any practice you get with applying knowledge to individuals or applying knowledge to a group, whether it's through volunteerism or whatever, take those opportunities.
All right, thank you, Andrea, John, and Melissa. One thing, as I'm hearing you guys talk, and I know Andrea SOAR pays, and Melissa, I know that you pay at Mountain, and I'm going to call it the wrong thing. I'm going to look at my little notes here. Mountain Youth Academy. I was going to call it something else. You know what I was going to call it. And John, I'm curious, you have a one-on-one ratio with your campers. Are these volunteers or are these paid?
So typically they're college students who are looking for experience and training, because we do offer a week-long hands-on training for our staff that I think is a part of the benefit. So we offer room and board and a $250 a week stipend. So it's not a career move unless you consider experience as an important part of that calculation. But yeah, we do. It's a $250 stipend and room and board and training. And of course, the best feeling of accomplishment that you'll ever have in your entire life. But, besides that, there's not much else I can offer you.
Well, and I didn't mean to diminish, because and you put it so well, like besides the best time of your life ever, that is like, and that's not a superlative. That is true of camp, and I think even more so when I talk to people who work with these different populations, how passionate they are. And I've known many faculty who continue to volunteer for these organizations because they get so much joy out of it and do it for free. I'm curious, since you were able to mention some of what you're able to offer your volunteers or your staff. Andrea, do you want to share what, is there a pay structure, or do you have volunteer opportunities? How does your organization work?
Sure. Shameless little plug. If you go to our website under employment opportunities, there's a breakdown if you don't remember what I'm saying. SOAR offers, it's 13 weeks. It's about 2.5 week training. That's very extensive into behavior management, as well as, outdoor training logistically. Our base pay starts at $3,500 for the summer. Room and board is provided. We have incremental increases depending on if you're eligible to be a driver, year in college, any certifications that you have. If you don't have any certifications, SOAR will provide wilderness first aid and CPR and lifeguard if you're interested in lifeguard at no cost to you. So that's provided part of our training as well. I'm also looking in this year with a company on a mental health training as well for that. Yeah, and then, like John said, the experience, it's a great resume builder no matter what summer camp you work at. It's a huge one with team building, communication, problem solving, all sort of those things. And we have multiple locations, so you can go to North Carolina, Wyoming, and Florida this year. And then in future years and in years past, we'll open up California again, but we closed that down this year due to COVID.
Yeah, my students who worked for you guys, they're like, we get to go to Key West during, was it January or December? And I'm like, what? So that is another perk. Having worked with them, then you can kind of go to different areas.
Yeah, and to add on just real quick, we have year-round programs as well. We have an academy and gap year. So we actually get a lot of App State graduates that will do their internship with us, and then they'll continue working year-round with our academy or gap year program.
Cool. And Melissa, like we said, you're not necessarily a camp. It's another type of residential experience, and you're building up your recreation program. So what is it? Are you looking for part-time jobs, or you have a full-time job? And
yeah, so my CEO says I could have as many unpaid interns as I want. But we do also offer some. Hey, I'm sorry. I will try and be quieter. Just give me a second, okay? Thank you. Sorry, my office is on a dorm, and apparently I'm being too loud. As Joy calls it, my camp counselor voice. But anyways, okay. So when I got hired, there was no recreation department. And so I have been focusing my time here on building a recreation department. And it has been a slow moving process as we have been expanding. But we are in the process of hiring. So right now, what we're trying, I have a few specific recreation facilitator positions that we did just fill. I will have an internship position opening when at the change of semester. So coming for the summer, I will have an internship position open, and that is full time and it's paid. Unfortunately, we don't provide housing or anything else, but it does come with a full medical benefits package too. And there is potential option for that becoming a full-time permanent position as well. Other than that specific recreation position, we're constantly hiring for mental health associates, which is essentially our floor staff, and they work directly with the kids. So you'll be paired on a dorm based off of gender and age, and then and you kind of are with the kids, working them through their schedule for the given shift. Our hope is that we're shifting our hiring mentality in the sense of we're trying to get individuals in those positions that are very willing to engage with the kids. And so the idea is to actually start providing some level of recreation training and recreation insight into the MHA position and outside of the actual recreation department. And so we're finding that since I've been hired, engagement, as engagement increases and activities increase, negative behaviors go down. And so, which is great because I actually have data in the building to show how effective my job is. And so, so that's really cool. And so now we're trying to broaden that across the building. And so we pretty much always have job openings, which is awesome. So we are also we're going to be, over time, the recreation department is going to be growing as well. And so I don't really know the full trajectory as to when I'll be having more recreation specific positions open. I do know that expansion is going to come. I don't know the exact timeline yet. We're also going to be getting a new building here soon. It's a whole new facility, and then we're going to be increasing our numbers of students. And so that will also increase our staff and increase our programming options. So for me, I'm thinking like 5-10 years down the road, big picture type things. And so for anyone that wants to come along into our team, we're really looking for someone that can invest and be flexible and accept the change, but also know that there's going to be a lot of internal growth as well.
All right, thank you. I haven't left you much time. My students, there are some specific questions you guys would like to pose to any of the panelists? Not particularly. All right. If you think of one, raise your hand or put it in the chat. The next thing I think I was going to ask, and you kind of addressed it a little bit, Andrea, what additional training and certifications have you had since college and who paid? So like Andrew, you said you guys provide that for your staff. Have you yourself had some additional training that you've had to pay for, and what has it been? And then, or how has someone else paid for it?
Yeah, SOAR will pay for certifications, but on like a rated amount per year. So for example, a solo wilderness first responder is a 3-year cert. So SOAR will pay a third of that each year that you work for them. So if you take it and then quit, you know, they're not caught with that bill for that, but using it with SOAR, you'll be fully reimbursed. I have my lifeguard instructor, Red Cross instructor, wilderness first aid, Swiftwater level 4, SPI, mental health cert, and I think that's it. And they also pay for professional development every year, like going to the ACA conference or some other conferences.
And let me tag on to what you just said for those of you kind of like, what's ACA? So it's American Camping Association. And I think it goes back to kind of what John was saying too, like, I'm thinking communication disorders, Elena, just because you had said that. There are camps for you, and there are camp directors who'd be seeking you out. So you could go to that website. I'll put it in the link when I'm done talking, so you can look and see, and you might be able to kind of peg an organization that might be looking for your talents. John, how about you? Any training, pay? How'd you?
So I was an autism specialist with the TEACH program for about 10 years. And through that program, I became a trainer of that methodology, structured teaching, and I have a certification in TEACH structured teaching. I am a CTRS. I'm trained and certified as an instructor of NCI Plus, which is North Carolina Interventions. It used to be Nonviolent Crisis Intervention, but then it was purchased by someone else, and it's similar to SPI and other. Right? Is that what SPI is? Andrea?
SPI is single pitch instructor, so climbing. Sorry.
Oh, climbing. Okay. I'm thinking of something totally different. What am I thinking of? Anyway,
that
it's nonviolent
communication gap.
Yeah. Nonviolent crisis intervention.
I think our social work students get a lot of that.
Yeah.
In that crisis intervention, yes.
Yeah, I can't think of any other ones.
I think, Melissa, just I know you, in an effort of time, you have a lot of similar trainings, and then your education gave you some more of that mental health background. The kind of the next question I wanted to swing around to, Susan was curious, could you speak more about the mental health training, what that looks like for you guys and your staff? Like, what are some mental health trainings that you've had? So Melissa, you might be able to address that first.
Yeah, so for us, Mountain Youth Academy is actually part of the UHS organization. And so a lot of our training is based on corporate, which is not always the most fun to sit through. So pretty much our organization has a required 2-week training where part of it is a 3-day process on learning TCI, which is physical restraints on children and how to prevent them, but also if it is needed, kind of how to do it safely and properly. And so that's a large chunk of it. But then also a lot of it is it's pretty much along with the physical restraints within the TCI training. A lot of it is like crisis intervention, pretty much, and de-escalation techniques, and trying to avoid the need for a physical restraint, and learning how to approach and communicate with students that are having a mental health crisis. And so that's the bulk of what our training is. And then right now, recreationally for me, I'm in the process of writing my departmental training process. So that currently does not exist. I pretty much just brain vomit on my interns. But otherwise, CPR and first aid, are included here, although first aid is not really necessary because we have our own nursing department, so they kind of take care of everything. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot that goes on as far as training goes. They are very into, as us as an organization, into professional development. They actually sent me to ACCT last year, the Association of Challenge Course Technologies, and my boss went just because she thought it sounded fun. And then they also they do a educational process as well. And so if you work for the organization for so long and you take educational courses to benefit the work that you're doing within the facility, then you can get a stipend in order to repay that as well.
Well, thank you. So we're coming up at the 5 o'clock mark. I am willing to stay here as till the bitter end. I also want to acknowledge the time that y'all have put into here. So if you need to leave, and no judgment, if I could get Andrea and Melissa to put their emails into the chat, so in case students want to reach out to you, they can have access to that. And like I said, I'll keep discussing. And again, as you guys, if you feel like comfortable leaving, go ahead and leave. If not, stick around with us. This is fascinating conversation. So the other piece, Andrea and John and Melissa, is like how, and thinking about mental health and safe spaces or sexual harassment or other issues that might be out there, or even in COVID times with camps. I mean, y'all are pressed now to provide not only physical health, but mental health. Is there training that you give your staff that you are thinking about in terms of how to help them in navigating those type of challenges?
I think ours is a little bit different because we're not therapeutic. We're kind of like our toes in the water on mental health with the way that we program and the population that we serve. But this year, with our academy, there's been, a lot of mental health issues, and I think it stems around COVID. And so one of the things that I've been researching and have been talking to is that we are having a PRN licensed therapist that will be available to our staff at any time at no cost to them. And so I just feel like our work is hard. For us, our kids are on our staff's on 24/7 for 12, 18, 26 days. And then add in this pandemic that we're doing, having that resource is really important for us, and being able to provide for them their safety for that. But it's new. It's something that we're looking into. We haven't in the past.
I've been hearing a lot more camps bringing in counseling services into staff training, and then even having it open weekly so staff can actually go and make an appointment and be able to kind of, because it is, like you said, that 24/7. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, we try to do during our staff training, which is pretty intensive. We talk intentionally about self-care. That's one of my interview questions when I interview staff is, what do you do to let off steam? Because that's an important piece of the puzzle in terms of my hiring decisions. Because it's, it doesn't make or break a decision, but it is important that a person have some idea of some healthy recreation. It's not like, well, I go out and drink with my friends all weekend. Well, I don't know if that's gonna cut the mustard here. I mean, it's fine if you want, no judgment here, but I like when people are able to say, oh, I like to read, or I go for walks, or so self-care is an important piece of our training, and it's something I consider. Our staffing model is a little bit different in that I try to the way that we've arranged our staffing is we engineer breaks for our staff more frequently. So we're a small program, we're an independent nonprofit camp program. So we take about 12 to 16 campers per week. And then we take them and for 2 hours in the middle of the day, we have them go to their group lodge, which is where they have a rest time. And for each week we assign rotating, well, we have 3 staff, 3 dedicated staff, and then 2 activity directors that are sort of the night watchman, or, you know, night duty and rest duty. So for 2 hours in the middle of the day, our counselors go and they can rest and do whatever they want while the rest duty takes over. And then starting around 8:30 p.m. until 8:30 a.m. the next day, we have a night duty staff so that the counselors can go and sleep. Because otherwise they might not sleep, because some of our folks don't go to sleep. They just stay up all night. And that our staff rotate through that throughout the summer. So if you're a staff with us, you would have 1 week of night duty. And then the rest of the time you'd be a counselor during the day. So we've kind of figured that, because I think we used to do it a different way, but it was so hard when you had to do all day long, because it's very taxing. It's very emotionally, it's not only physically taxing, because I mean, we're looking at folks who are working like 10-hour days, even with the 2-hour break in the middle. But, you know, some of the campers have some pretty alarming behavior. Not very many, but some, like, you know, Melissa was mentioning, we have some folks that have self-injurious behavior. That's very alarming to witness. You know, my first summer that I worked there, I worked with a camper who he was 7 years old, and he banged his head on the ground when he became upset. And it was very, you know, it's very serious stuff. So it's not only physically draining, but it's emotionally kind of jarring. So that piece of self-care is really important. If we could afford a therapist, I would have one. But we also have a support system in place where we have each of the activity directors serve as a group leader. So we assign a small group of the staff to group leaders, and they can talk to them. And so we do our best. I talked a lot there, but.
No, I think you really highlight something that a lot of people with mental health, I mean, even with the crisis going on, it's all about self-care. In order to be able to care for people and give them the experience you want them to have, if your staff can't be there, you know, and I learned that the hard way as a camp staff member, where I just got so sick and I couldn't be there to do the job I was hired to do. And at the same time, our mental health is crucial to our success. So I'm glad to hear that, you know, that's something that y'all prioritize, and you're even looking at clues as to how behaviors might explain my ability to do self-care. I mean, Ross, you're here to the bitter end. Melissa, do you want to have anything else to say? Do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, so actually this kind of comes from an educational background. There is a children's book that I actually utilize with my staff. It's essentially the premise is about filling a bucket, and that you cannot, as helping professionals, we are constantly pouring into other people's buckets, making sure they have what they need. But it's also important to make sure that our buckets are full, and because you cannot pour from an empty bucket. And so that's been one thing that I have actually really struggled to do, because I am very much into pouring into other people's buckets and not so good at filling my own bucket. But I have found, especially as I've moved into a management role, that's my role as a manager, isn't so much to fill the buckets of the kids, but to fill the buckets of my staff, because then my staff turn around and fill the buckets of the kids. And that's actually one of the reasons why I left the camping industry, is because there were some camp directors that did not agree with that philosophy that I have. And for me, that kind of put me in a difficult position as a manager. And so here at Mountain Youth Academy, we are a mental health organization. And so maintaining the mental health of the staff is huge, because that then turns around and has an impact on our kids. And so we have a very team-based mentality. And so, like, if there is a staff member that is power struggling with the student, and like, other staff will go up and be like, hey, like, step out, go, like, get some water, go hang out for a second, take a break, like, I've got it covered. And so we are actually constantly, like, watching other staff members, making sure, like, their needs are being taken care of on top of taking care of the kids' needs. And so and know, like, hey, like, this is a hard job it's okay to struggle, and it's okay to say, I'm struggling right now, I need a break. And so that's very much in our core environment here, and which has been one of the things I love so much about this organization is how everyone takes care of each other.
Well, y'all are modeling.
Yes, no, exactly.
Self-care. I mean, isn't that what camps and youth organizations are, is to model, healthy behaviors, I guess.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then the kids feed off of it. And so that's what you would always want is like, I mean, if a staff member comes into work stressed, they're going to project that onto the kids. And then the kids are going to have negative behaviors because of that. And so you really have to like check yourself at the door and do your best to just leave all of it elsewhere and just come into work and focus on the kids. And then that way, and then even still, there's going to be hardships, but those staff helping out each other is the key factor with us.
So Ross, I know you were talking about you've created some camps, and you're also getting your teaching degree in special education. Was that your intent with teaching, or did you fall in love with working with different populations and then go and do that? I mean,
yeah. So my story's a little weird. Well, it's not weird. It's just a little different, especially for males, I think, in my age group. When I was a freshman in high school, I started volunteering at a camp called Hugs Camp in Hall River, North Carolina, or Brown Summit, North Carolina. It's at Hall River State Park. It's associated with the Episcopal Diocese of North Carolina. And we serve 1 week every summer, adults and children with intellectual disabilities, the whole range. We've been in operation for 32 years now. So I started doing that as a freshman in high school, did it for 4 years, fell in love with it. I didn't get paid. I just volunteered my week, but I loved it. It was great. And that's where the special ed thing kind of came out of. Once I graduated high school, I was a counselor for them for 3 years. And I was also working as a lifeguard at a camp in Chapel Hill. That's where I started the inclusive day camp for children with severe disabilities. We just kind of wiggled our way into an already organized camp. It worked out really well. We raised all the money to send our kids for free. They all came from low socioeconomic backgrounds. It was around $15,000 a summer. Wow. We sent 15 kids for 3 weeks completely free. And then 3 years into doing that, I became the director at Hugs Camp. So I still am, but we're not operating this summer. We're doing virtual camp, so a little different. Our camp's gotten pretty big. We put our cap at 50 campers with disabilities now, 75 high schoolers that are our caregivers. We call them helper campers, and that's what I was. And then about 40 staff. So,
wow. So the helper campers are in a kind of an adult-like role helping, yeah. And at the same time, they're not old enough to work at other jobs or do it. I mean, what a great kind of concept, because when you look at developmental models or stages, kids who are 12, 13, 14, 15 really want to be in leadership, adult-like roles. Yeah. Well done.
Yeah, definitely. And it's worked out really well. That's the way the camp has always been structured. When I went through it, it was that way. We do a weekend of training for our high schoolers. We give them the basic rundown of the characteristics of the disabilities, things they need to know about interacting with disabilities. Our campers come, and some of them are total care campers that need assistance with showering, toileting, feeding, the whole 9 yards. So we have to do that stuff as well. So it's an interesting camp. It definitely helps kids mature really quick. My first year as a freshman in high school, I had a total care camper. But I loved it. It was great. I think that's where I fell in love with the whole field. So yeah, but I'm doing special ed, and I am getting my master's in special ed. I'm in the accelerated master's program. But I know camp is like kind of where my heart is. That's what I want to do. So I don't know, maybe y'all can give me some advice. I'm already going to have a master's in special ed, but I would love to do the camp stuff, but I don't really have the formal knowledge in, organizing camps, I've done leadership at camps, but I don't really know how to do it. Do y'all have any tips for like transitioning into that?
You don't need any formal knowledge, man. You got the hard part is the master's in special ed. I mean, I don't want to downplay the work that all of us are doing, but if you have the passion and you've already been able to operationalize, this day camp that you talked about, which is an amazing accomplishment for a person who's doing it as a side gig.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is figuring out, it's that funding stuff, really. I mean, if you're going to be a non-for-profit, that's the piece that's the hardest, I think, is the funding, because the program, I mean, camp, and I would recommend, just like I think the other folks would recommend, you write out a manual, start working on a staff manual, start working on a camp manual, take a template that already exists and then tweak it. But I think that the programming stuff is not going to be the hardest part for you. Yeah. I think the hardest part for me, I'll just say the hardest part for me is the funding piece, and trying to get it so that it's affordable for anybody who wants to access it, without having, sort of the backing of a larger corporate entity is hard to do.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge that day camp runs into. We didn't operate last year because of COVID. We're not going to operate this year. Same situation. We also kind of have a interesting relationship with the camp that we're at. The executive director of the camp isn't in full support of us. The assistant director is in full support. So it's, we're looking for other options. We definitely want to keep the program open, because in Chapel Hill, you would think that there would be options. There's really not that many options. So, yeah.
If they want to rent a place in the mountains, give me a call. We'll give you a good.
I appreciate it.
The camp community is the coolest community that I've ever interacted with. If you ask for help with anything, like, they're there to help you. There's a lot of channels that, if you give me your email address, I can send you. There's like Slack lines that we talk all the time about, like, things to do with COVID. There's Wednesday, there's a roundtable about what to do when a camper has COVID. There's just so many resources, and everybody shares anything. We're all here to help everyone. So it's great.
And I would say, like, pursue conversations with professionals. I talked my way into every single camp job I've ever gotten. Like, and even this job, I had the right conversation with the right person, and they created a position for me based off of that fit my skill set and what could be beneficial within the organization. Now, granted, I have a corporation backing me, so that makes things a little bit easier, but even still, like, it was just talk to the right people at the right times, and you will talk your way into a job. Like, that's how the camping industry works, is even if, like, you have a conversation with one person, they will pass you off to someone else that they know is hiring. And the camping industry is very good at utilizing people's skill sets and letting jobs morph around talent versus trying to make people fit into specific boxes. And so even if you have some strengths, and even if there's some areas of growth, the right organization will emphasize that and emphasize those strengths. And that's the key to look for, in my opinion.
And Ross, the other thing I might, if you have the time and the space, notwithstanding SOAR and Camp is it Lakey? How do I say it?
Some people think we're lackeys, but we pronounce it Lakey.
Sorry. Lakey, Camp Lakey. Like Victory Junction and Camp Twin Lakes, they're unique camps. They have adaptive facilities, and then each week a camp comes, like you were talking about the Haw River thing that you were doing. Each week it might be a burn victims that might be there, or it might be somebody who has cerebral palsy, or whatever it might be. And so you can get some real good programming experience, as well as see how they run it, to see. And so again, with Camp Lakey and and SOAR, as well as what Melissa's offering, just kind of seeing the different experiences. I agree with John. You don't need formal experience. You just need to just be out there doing it and keep making those connections, as Melissa has suggested. Keep talking about it, and you'll start to really see some other opportunities for you. And you're prime as a special education teacher. Like, people are gonna want you. Yeah.
I have to say, as a career coach, I have to say that experience is experience, whether it's paid or not. And so your work with the Hugs camp is experience.
Yeah.
And it doesn't diminish it that you didn't get paid for it. In some ways, I think but so you can highlight that experience because you're a director of a camp right now, is what you said. So that's great experience that even some of my students in rec management don't necessarily have yet. So yeah, something to think about.
I've been very lucky. I mean, I know that I turned 23 this summer, so having these opportunities at such a young age is really good.
Well, and knowing your passion, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
that's kind of a cool thing. I'm listening to Melissa and John. They kind of fell into these type things and realized they wanted to help people. You kind of had that camp experience, and it kind of created. That's what I love to hear about camp, is how it has influenced where you're going and how it continues to do that. Whether you are a camper or you started being a camper, a counselor, or your staff. I am going to go ahead and wrap this up. You have everybody's contact information. Ross, we really appreciate you sticking with us to the bitter end. I want to thank you,
come
Melissa,
to the Outdoor Jobs Fair on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Is it virtual?
It's virtual. It's all through Handshake. Go in Handshake and register. It'll open up that you can pick your one-on-one sessions or your 30-minute sessions. It creates a schedule for you. It's all virtual. Easy peasy.
Cool.
And John, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure to meet you. John, let me also make a connection with you. If there's anything I can do for you, helping you get volunteers or helping you get some staff, I have access to our rec management Facebook page. We have students who are looking for internships, and I usually have 2 or 3 students a year who are looking to work with people who have a disability of some sort. And we also have a weekend camp called Camp Crinkle Root for autism. So many
Heather Hill was the director of this program for many years, and she was an App State grad, I think. And I even came up there to talk a couple years ago to the staff of Camp Crinkle Root. I don't remember who was teaching. It might even have been you.
Well, I kind of send students that way. Her name's escaping me, who's in charge of it. What I'm trying to say is, if I can be of help for you to find staff,
I'll send you
I'll promote it. Okay,
terrific. I'll send you some information, because I would love to hire some students, and depending on what their internship needs are, I can only take one CTRS intern per summer, just because of the NCTRC standards.
Well, we don't even have CTRS, so
that's depending on the college, what the requirements are, I'd be willing to supervise interns. So
awesome.
I'll send you like some brochures and stuff.
And if we can get
I'll
you
put
set
my
up.
email in there as well. It's JamesJJ@AppState.
And I'll put mine in as well, because if you want to get into our Handshake, and we can talk, we can make sure we advertise this to some of our other students as well, because we had a nice blend of students today.
Yeah.
And Ross,
notice that? Yeah.
The other thing I'll offer you, and I would have offered, I just didn't have a chance to offer it to those students. I may be a recreation professor, but I am happy to help you however I can. Because like I said, in the beginning, you might not have heard it. My evil plot is to get people in the camp professional industry. So if there's anything I can do to support you, there's often scholarships, and an ACA is free for a first-time member. So if you're like, how do I get into that? Email me, and I'll send you the links that you can become a member and kind of see what's going on with that professional organization to complement your already experience.
Yeah, that would be great.
Right.
Pick her up on it. She's awesome.
And nice to meet everyone. Nice to meet you, Melissa. Good work.
Yes, nice to meet y'all too.
Talking to you.
You got my email. If y'all need me, reach out. Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
so
Have a
much,
good
Career
week.
Development Center. Thank you so much. This is awesome.